In a previous video, I talked about a 2018 Model X and why I think it's a good value and preferable over a brand new Model Y. In this video, I will show you what it's like to drive a Model X and share some of my opinions on the experience. Going from any internal combustion engine car to another one is similar, right? There's buttons and you interact with the car in the same way. You push the start button, turn on the engine, all that stuff. With a Tesla, it's all technology, it's all interfacing with this massive screen. And so it's a mindset shift, especially if you've never driven one before. You just have to take a lot of time right when you get into the car to figure out what to do with it. You can't just get in and drive. It's a bit disorienting at first, so it does take a little while to get used to. But then once you get used to it, it becomes second nature, just like with any other car. But it is a change right when you get in. And the first thing that you're really aware of is the battery range. With the gas car, gas stations are once every 30 seconds you run into one, not a problem. And filling up gas is whatever, 1 minute, 2 minutes, pretty easy and quick. With charging a Tesla, even with supercharging, you have to be aware of the range, especially going on road trips. For me, with this car, 2018 Model X, the range is quickly dipped down for reasons I'll get into. And even with 30 minutes, an hour of driving, it's already down to 50%, so I have to think about charging the car soon. And that's just not a concern you would ever have with a gas-powered car, unless there was a shortage of gas, but that's another story. With the Tesla, it's technology on wheels. Think of a MacBook or a computer or an iPhone. It's just wheels that are attached to a car. It's technology first, then driver, then driving. And ultimately, Tesla is not about making the driver happy. They're trying to eliminate the driver. Even though it's not a driver's car, Tesla has done a surprisingly good job at making it fun as much as they can. And it's not oriented around the driver for sure. I'll compare this to my Porsche Macan. I actually look forward to getting into that car and driving every day. I can't say the same with this car. It's fun in its own way, and it's about the technology, and that's what's interesting and fun about it. But from a pure driving perspective, it's not as engaged. It's disconnected from the road, and it is all about the technology. And so it doesn't create that sense of excitement as an auto enthusiast or somebody that likes to drive. So you have to just take it for what it's worth. The rear view camera on this car is huge. You have this huge center screen, which is actually kind of nice because you can see everything behind you, and this is where technology adds so much more to the driving experience. And same thing with the center dash gauge cluster, where you have the road that's clearly defined, the lanes, you can see all the cars around you. And that's another thing to get used to, is you have a huge amount of information that you have to process. You have information coming in from the road, coming in from all of your screens, all the sensors, all the cameras. You could not look at any of the mirrors and just look at what's on the computer, what's on display right in front of you. But it's just second nature, right? To look at the mirrors and to look to see who's in your blind spot. You really don't have to do any of that with this car. And so all of this is just something to get used to, and just brain-wise, it's a lot to take in. And I'm sure if you own the car and if you've driven it for a long time, it becomes easy to just adapt to. If you're new to Tesla and you haven't driven one in a while, which I haven't, it's a mind shift in terms of processing all this info. I'm really impressed with this used Model X. Brand new is $150,000. Is it worth $150,000? I don't think so. I don't think any Tesla is worth that much. It doesn't have that $150,000 feel like a Aston Martin or a Ferrari or anything in that price range. It certainly doesn't come nearly as close to any of those cars or that league of cars. From a used car perspective, this 2018 Model X is probably now worth $50,000, $60,000, depending on miles. If I compare a used Model X to a brand new Model Y, I would get this because the Model X is a more luxurious version of the Model Y. It's bigger, the ride is better, it's more comfortable. Now, this is a top-of-the-line Model X, the P100D, which costs that much. You could certainly get like a P75D, which would be a lot cheaper. But the Ludicrous version, the P100E, it's just something special because the power it has, the crazy acceleration, getting pushed back into the seat, like all of that is, you can't get it with any other car. If you think about buying a brand new Model Y for $60,000 versus a used Model X for that same price, I would go with the Model X, especially the P100 version. Something that's fully loaded, has all the goodies, because that's part of the appeal, or a big part of the appeal for a driving enthusiast, is that instant torque, that acceleration, how fast you can go, and being able to punch it over and over. All of that is really, really intoxicating and fun, and it adds to the experience. So a used Model X with that much power, in my book, it's totally worth it. Now, comparing this to any other car, is it worth it? That's a topic of another video, because if I'm going to spend that much money, I don't know if I would get this. There's so many other things I could get. The reason why used cars, especially a used Tesla, is a good purchase is you can experience the Tesla for $60,000. You can sell it after a while if you don't like it, and you don't lose that much money because it's already so heavily depreciated. This 2018 with about 60,000 miles on it, it's held up really well. It drives real solid. There's some rattles here and there, and you can hear some squeaks, but it's not that bad at all. The ride in this Model X, I was expecting it to be a little bit better. Unfortunately, it's not as good as I was thinking, and compared to the Macan, the Porsche Macan that I own, it's definitely not nearly as good. You do feel the bumps, and it does get unstable over bumpy roads, and it doesn't absorb them as good as I would think that it would, considering that it has air suspension. And maybe it's just a ragged out version of a used Tesla. But generally, I would say the car is very well put together, still solid, and the material and the quality, the fit and finish is good. I mean, it's not a high-end luxury SUV. Definitely doesn't compete with anything in the $150,000 range, but considering the technology and everything you get with the car, and where it's headed, and this car has full self-driving, which I'll show you in another video, all of that put together, and knowing that you're getting technology on wheels, it's worth the money in my opinion. It's about the car driving itself, so that's number one. That's the number one goal, is get rid of human drivers once and for all. Now, when it comes to driving this car, it is fun because the center of gravity is low. So as you take turns, you can take turns with a lot of confidence, especially for this pretty big, massive, heavy SUV. You can toss it around. It feels very stable, very sturdy. It's planted for good reason, because those heavy battery packs are under your feet. It's certainly not like a typical SUV. When you're driving this car, the regenerative braking is another thing to get used to. You could turn it off, but you wouldn't want to because it recharges the battery. And every time you lift off the accelerator, it slows down. So it is annoying at first until you get used to it. Then you just change your driving style to adapt to the regenerative braking. One really nice thing about the Tesla Model X is the sound system on this car is really nice, especially if you're sitting at a stoplight and it's quiet and you turn up your music or your podcast. It sounds really good. The audio quality is amazing, and I don't think any other car comes close to it. And so that's kudos to Tesla for figuring out how to put this amazing sound quality in this car. All right. Time to floor it once again. Oh my God. Oh man. This is crazy, the amount of acceleration this has. Not only do you get pushed back into the seat, the front end lifts up, and you feel like you're about to take off, just like shooting off into space. The acceleration. The camera actually fell off because the G-forces were too much for it to handle. It's just hard to believe how the electric motors can propel this car in such a quick way. Oh my God. Oh, I'll never get sick of doing that. You can do it over and over until the battery is just completely dead. The problem with this Tesla Model X is that it's too fast. On regular city roads, you obviously can't use the insane power that it has, and you can't floor it at every opportunity. So there's limits to how much fun you can have with this on a day-to-day basis. And when you drive the car, you almost feel like you want to put it into autopilot or self-driving mode, just because it's almost begging you, it's almost asking you that it wants to do that. Like, it doesn't want to be driven by you, it would rather drive itself. That's the sense that you get in this. One of the downsides of using the Ludicrous mode and punching it over and over again is it really drains your battery. So within 30 minutes, an hour, you'll have to go recharge again if you're really hard on the accelerator. Using Ludicrous mode a whole bunch means you have to charge your battery more often. So now I found a supercharger nearby, and so that's where I'm headed to charge up the car again. So I've arrived at a very muddy supercharging location. So charging has started, 35 minutes. So now we're plugged in and charging, and this is why Teslas and EVs are extra work, because now you have to sit around and wait, and ideally you have something to do, but in my case, I didn't have anything planned. So I'm just gonna sit here in the car and wait, and 30 minutes to go. So we'll see how quickly this charges, and at least I found a supercharger which charges at a much faster rate. So we'll see how long it takes, and then we'll be off on our way. Okay, so that took about 50 minutes to go from right around 30% charge to 90%, which on the supercharger, taking that long probably means, you know, it's something you have to deal with on a used Tesla, so it's something to keep in mind. Again, adding to that charging factor and creating that extra hassle, but that's the downside of owning the electric vehicle, but minor inconvenience for all of the other benefits you get. So to wrap it up, the Tesla Model X, and even though this is not a car made for drivers, I think as a auto enthusiast or somebody that loves to drive, you can still have a lot of fun with this. This is clearly not your Porsche or BMW or Audi or any of the brands that have been built around the driver and making driving fun. But it's still pretty impressive what Tesla has been able to pull off, especially with the P100D or with the latest Plaid model. Because the fun of a car like this is the instant torque and the acceleration. And the more you can do it, the better. But it's not like you can do it every day, all day, every day on public streets without you getting tossed in jail. But it's not just the sheer speed that this is good at. It's still good on turns. You can still have fun driving it. And it gives you the satisfaction, not to the same extent as like a Porsche, for instance, but it can still bring a lot of smiles and joy just from a pure driving satisfaction perspective. With the whole world trending this way and EVs becoming a thing and existing car manufacturers changing, it's good to know that Tesla has still retained what is ultimately fun about driving, and future Tesla cars like the Cybertruck and everything else that comes, I think we're in good hands knowing that those will be fun cars to drive. But knowing that you can get your hands on a used Tesla Model X for $50,000, $60,000, it's a good deal because you get to be a part of the future. You get to enjoy all that's great about electric cars and all of the technology that's coming, including self-driving. So you get to enjoy all of it. You'll still miss out on the analog driving experience. So you should always have something additional besides the Tesla, so you can still shift if you want to, or listen to engine noises, exhaust, what have you. All of those things are still super important and critical, and you should still do all of those, but this is not a bad one to have in your garage if you have the means to be able to do so. I think if I was in the market for a high-tech car like this with self-driving capability and all of the fun stuff that comes along with this car, I would want to own one, especially this P100D, which is absolutely insane, and it should not, something like this should not exist, but I'm glad it does. So I would recommend it. I would give it a thumbs up. I don't think I would get a brand new one because what's the point? With used cars, the beauty is being able to drive these, sell these, buy something else, and keep enjoying whatever car you want. And this allows you to be able to do that.